My son's voice on the phone made my stomach drop. "Mom, please, just this once, try not to embarrass me." I stood in my small kitchen in Queens, the morning sun barely filtering through the window I'd been meaning to clean for weeks. My coffee had gone cold in my hand. 28 years of raising this boy alone, and this was what I got on his birthday morning. "Ethan, honey, what are you talking about?" I tried to keep my voice light, but something in his tone made me nervous. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." He sighed, and I could picture him running his hand through his hair the way he always did when frustrated. "Remember my college graduation, the karaoke incident?" My cheeks flushed. Okay, so maybe belting out "Don't Stop Believin'" in the middle of the reception hall hadn't been my finest moment, but I'd been so proud of him. "That was different, sweetheart. I was just celebrating, I know." His voice softened slightly. "But Mom, tonight is really important. My boss is coming to the party, Daniel Bradshaw himself. Do you know how huge that is? He never attends employee events. Never." I heard a woman's voice in the background. Sarah, his girlfriend. They'd been dating for 2 years, and she seemed sweet enough, though I'd only met her a handful of times. "Your mother will be fine, babe," Sarah said, her voice carrying through the phone. "Right, Olivia, you'll keep it appropriate." Something about the way she said appropriate stung more than it should have. I looked down at my worn bathrobe at the small kitchen that had been home for 30 years. The paint was peeling near the window, and the tiles hadn't been updated since the 80s. But it was clean, and it was mine, and I'd raised a good son here. Or had I? "Of course I will," I said quietly. "I'll just come say happy birthday and leave early. I promise." "That's not—" Ethan started, then stopped. "Mom, I want you there. I do. This promotion means everything to me. If I can impress Mr. Bradshaw tonight, I might actually have a shot at the senior marketing director position. It could change my whole career." "I understand." And I did. God, I did. I'd worked 2 jobs for years to put him through college, picked up every extra shift I could as an ER nurse at St. Mary's Hospital, until my body couldn't take it anymore. I knew what ambition looked like. I knew what desperation felt like. "The reservation is at the Garden Terrace at 7. Ethan continued, his voice warming up again. "It's really fancy, Mom. Maybe wear that blue dress, the nice one. The blue dress. I'd bought it at a clearance sale 5 years ago for a wedding I never ended up attending. It still had the tags on it hanging in the back of my closet, like a promise I'd never kept to myself. "I'll wear the blue dress," I promised. "And Ethan, happy birthday, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too, Mom." The line went dead, and I stood there in my kitchen feeling smaller than I had in years. The apartment suddenly felt too quiet, too empty. I walked to my bedroom and opened the closet, pushing past the scrubs I hadn't worn in 2 years, past the casual clothes that made up my daily uniform of invisibility. There in the back was the blue dress, and next to it a small wooden box I kept on the top shelf. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled it down. Inside were the things I never talked about. A hospital ID badge from 15 years ago, worn and faded. A newspaper clipping. A letter I'd never sent. And a photograph of a little boy in a hospital bed, tubes and wires keeping him tethered to life, his father asleep in the chair beside him, face streaked with tears. I'd thought about this boy every single day for 15 years. Wondered if he'd grown up happy. Wondered if his father ever found peace after losing his wife that terrible night. I'd given something precious to save this child, something that had cost me more than anyone knew. And now, if what I suspected was true, I was about to come face to face with that father again. I looked at myself in the small mirror above my dresser, 52 years old, gray streaking through my brown hair, laugh lines around my eyes that looked more like worry lines these days. I wasn't the young nurse I'd been that night 15 years ago, strong enough to work 18-hour shifts, brave enough to make impossible choices. But I was still here, and I was still me. I picked up my phone and made a call I'd been planning for weeks, ever since I'd seen the name Daniel Bradshaw on Ethan's company website, and felt my heart stop. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was young, confused. "Marcus," I said softly. "This is Olivia Thompson. We met at the hospital fundraiser last month. I need to talk to you about something important. It's about your father, and the night that changed both our lives." There was a long silence. Then, "You're her. You're the one who saved me." "Yes," I whispered. "And tomorrow night, I think it's time your father finally knew that." 24 hours earlier, Ethan had stood in the conference room at Bradshaw Enterprises, watching his career flash before his eyes. The quarterly report he'd spent 6 weeks preparing was projected on the screen behind him, but Daniel Bradshaw wasn't looking at it. The CEO stood at the window, 58 years old and radiating the kind of cold authority that made grown men stammer. His silver hair was perfectly styled. His suit probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent, and his expression hadn't changed once during the entire presentation. "The numbers don't match," Daniel said finally, his voice quiet but cutting. "Slide 17. The social media engagement metrics. They're off by 3% from the data marketing provided last week." Ethan's mouth went dry. That's because I used the updated figures from... Did I ask you to use updated figures? Daniel turned from the window and his eyes were like ice. "Did I ask you to make independent decisions about data sources without consulting me first?" "No, sir, but I thought..." "That's the problem, Thompson. You thought." Daniel walked slowly to the front of the room, each step deliberate. "In this company, we don't think. We execute. We follow procedures. We maintain consistency. Do you understand?" Around the table, Ethan's colleagues stared at their hands. No one made eye contact. No one dared to breathe too loudly when Daniel Bradshaw was in this mood. "Yes, sir," Ethan managed. "I understand." "Do you..." Daniel stopped inches from him. Up close, Ethan could see the fine lines around the CEO's eyes, the tension in his jaw. There was something else there, too. Something that looked almost like pain, but it was gone before Ethan could be sure. "Because this is the third mistake you've made this month. The third time I've had to correct your work. The third time you've wasted my time and this company's resources." Ethan felt his face burning. "It won't happen again, Mr. Bradshaw. I promise." "Promises mean nothing." Daniel picked up the report from the table and flipped through it with barely concealed disgust. "Results mean everything. Fix this by Monday morning. And if I see one more error, one more assumption, one more instance of you thinking you know better than established protocols." He let the sentence hang in the air like a threat. "Yes, sir." Daniel dropped the report on the table with a sharp slap and walked toward the door. Then he paused his hand on the handle. "Your birthday party is tomorrow night, isn't it? The garden terrace?" Ethan's heart sank. How did he even know about that? "Yes, sir, but you certainly don't need to..." "What time?" At 7 o'clock, but really, Mr. Bradshaw, it's just a casual thing with friends and... "I'll be there." Daniel opened the door. "Consider it a professional development opportunity. Let's see if you can handle a simple social event better than you handle data analysis." And then he was gone, leaving Ethan standing in front of his colleagues, humiliated and terrified. Rob Martinez waited until they heard the elevator doors close before speaking. "Dude, that was brutal even for him." "I know." Ethan sank into a chair and put his head in his hands. "I'm so screwed. He's never come to an employee event before. Never. And now he's coming to my birthday party specifically to judge me." "Maybe he's mellowing out," Rob suggested weakly. "I mean, he's going to a party. That's social, right?" Jessica Williams, Daniel's executive assistant for 20 years, poked her head into the conference room. Her expression was sympathetic, but knowing. "Don't count on mellowing," she said quietly. "Mr. Bradshaw doesn't do social. He doesn't do casual. He certainly doesn't go to birthday parties for junior marketing executives." "Then why is he coming?" Ethan asked desperately. Jessica glanced down the hallway, making sure they were alone. "Between you and me, something's been different about him this week. He asked me to look something up in the old hospital records database. We keep them because of the company's medical supply division. He was looking for something from 15 years ago, but he wouldn't tell me what." "What does that have to do with my party?" "I don't know." Jessica's voice dropped even lower. "But I've worked for Daniel Bradshaw since before his wife died. I know when something is eating at him, and right now something is." After she left, Rob turned to Ethan with wide eyes. "His wife died. Car accident. 15 years ago." Ethan had Googled his boss extensively when he'd first gotten the job. "She died instantly. Their son Marcus was in the car too, nearly died. Spent weeks in the hospital. Bradshaw's been like this ever since. Cold. Impossible. Alone. That's tragic, man, but it doesn't excuse him being a complete, I know." Ethan stood up and gathered his things. "I need to go fix this report, and I need to call my mom and make sure she doesn't do anything embarrassing tomorrow night. Having Bradshaw there is going to be stressful enough without worrying about my mother singing show tunes or telling embarrassing stories from when I was 5. But as he walked to his desk, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something strange was happening. Why would Daniel Bradshaw, the man who never showed emotion, never attended social events, never did anything that didn't directly benefit the company's bottom line, suddenly decide to come to his birthday party? And why? When Daniel had looked at the employee photo on Ethan's desk earlier that week, the one of Ethan and his mother at his college graduation, had his face gone so pale. In her small apartment in Queens, Olivia Thompson sat at her kitchen table with old hospital records spread in front of her. She shouldn't have these records. They were technically confidential even after 15 years. But when you'd worked in a hospital for 20 years, when you'd saved lives and held hands and whispered comfort to the dying people remembered you, they owed you favors. Dr. Michael Foster had been one of those people. He'd been the attending physician that night 15 years ago, the one who'd advised against what Olivia was about to do, the one who'd ultimately allowed it anyway, because they were out of options and running out of time. The records confirmed what she'd suspected for weeks. Marcus Bradshaw, age 11 at the time of admission. Massive internal injuries from a car accident. Type AB negative blood extremely rare. Father Daniel Bradshaw, CEO of Bradshaw Enterprises. Mother Anna Bradshaw deceased on arrival. Olivia touched the faded notation in the margin of the report, written in Dr. Foster's neat handwriting, emergency blood donation from O. Thompson RN, 450 ml. Donor experienced severe complications post-transfusion. Patient stable. Severe complications. What a clinical way to describe 3 days of unconsciousness, a month of weakness so profound she could barely stand, and the end of her nursing career because her body never fully recovered. She'd been 37 years old. Ethan had been 13 months old, barely walking, completely dependent on her. She'd had no husband, no family to help, just a babysitter who couldn't understand why Mommy wouldn't wake up. But she'd do it again. God help her, she'd do it all again, because when she'd looked into that little boy's face, seen him fighting for every breath, watched his father's world crumble as he stood helpless and terrified, she'd known there was only one choice. Her phone rang. It was the number she'd called earlier. Mrs. Thompson. The voice was young male, uncertain. This is Marcus Bradshaw. You said you saved my life. I did. Olivia's voice was steady despite the emotions churning inside her. 15 years ago at St. Mary's Hospital. You probably don't remember. You were unconscious for most of it. I don't remember much from that time. Just fragments, pain, lots of machines, my dad sleeping in a chair crying. I'd never seen him cry before. Marcus paused. I've never seen him cry since either. Grief does different things to different people. He's been different ever since. Cold, distant, even with me. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. Sometimes I wonder if he wishes I'd died instead of Mom. No. Olivia's response was immediate and fierce. Marcus, I saw your father that night. I saw him holding your hand, begging God to save you, offering his own life in exchange for yours. Whatever he's become, whatever distance is between you, it's not because he doesn't love you. It's because he loves you too much, and he doesn't know how to handle that. There was a long silence. Then, why are you calling me now, after all these years? Because I found out something recently. My son, Ethan Thompson, works for your father's company, and tomorrow is his 28th birthday. Your father is planning to attend the party. My father doesn't attend birthday parties. He doesn't even come to mine. I know. Olivia looked at the photograph in her box of memories, at the little boy who would be a man now. That's why I think this is important. Marcus, I think your father is looking for me. I think he's been looking for 15 years. And I think it's time he found me. What do you want me to do? Come to the party tomorrow night, 7 o'clock at the Garden Terrace in Manhattan. I'll text you the address. Come as my guest. Your father doesn't know we've met, does he? No. I went to the hospital fundraiser under my mother's maiden name. I use it sometimes when I don't want people to treat me differently because of who my father is. Marcus paused. Mrs. Thompson, what exactly are you planning? Olivia smiled, though her heart was racing. I'm planning to give your father something he lost a long time ago. Hope. And maybe if I'm lucky, I can help both of you find your way back to each other. Why would you do that? You don't even know us. Because 15 years ago, I gave you my blood to save your life. But the gift you gave me was even more valuable. You reminded me why I became a nurse in the first place. You reminded me that one person in one moment can change everything. She took a deep breath. And Marcus, you and Ethan are friends. He's mentioned you before, though he doesn't know you're Daniel Bradshaw's son. That's not a coincidence. That's fate telling us it's time. After she hung up, Olivia sat in the gathering darkness of her kitchen. Tomorrow night was going to change everything. Ethan would be furious with her. He'd explicitly asked her not to embarrass him, and here she was planning something that would turn his birthday party upside down. But some things were more important than a peaceful birthday dinner. Some truths needed to come to light, no matter how uncomfortable. She picked up the photograph of Marcus in the hospital bed and whispered, "I hope I'm doing the right thing." In the picture, frozen in time 15 years ago, a little boy fought for his life while his father slept beside him. Both of them unaware that the woman who'd saved them was making a sacrifice that would change the course of all their lives. Tomorrow at the garden terrace, those lives would intersect again, and nothing would ever be the same. The garden terrace was everything Ethan had promised. Elegant without being pretentious, expensive without being showy. String lights wrapped around columns, soft jazz playing in the background tables dressed in white linen. Sarah had outdone herself with the planning. Ethan stood near the entrance at 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes before guests were supposed to arrive, and tried to calm his racing heart. "You're going to hyperventilate," Sarah said, adjusting his tie for the third time. She looked beautiful in a simple black dress, her dark hair swept up. "Breathe. It's just a birthday party." "It's not just a birthday party. My boss is coming. The boss who thinks I'm incompetent. The boss who's probably looking for a reason to fire me." "He's not going to fire you at your own birthday party. That would be terrible PR. You don't know Daniel Bradshaw." Rob arrived first, as always. He handed Ethan a wrapped box and grinned. "Scotch. The good stuff. You're going to need it tonight. You have no idea." More guests began trickling in. College friends, a few neighbors, Sarah's sister, and her family. Ethan's apartment was too small for a party this size, so renting a private room at the garden terrace had seemed like the perfect solution. Now he wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. What if it seemed like he was trying too hard? What if Bradshaw thought he was financially irresponsible? What if his mother showed up and started telling stories about his childhood? At 7:15, his phone buzzed. A text from his mother, running a few minutes late. Traffic. "See you soon. Love you. A few minutes late." That was fine. Maybe she'd missed Daniel Bradshaw's arrival entirely. Maybe she'd... "Is that him?" Sarah whispered, gripping Ethan's arm. Ethan turned toward the entrance and felt his stomach drop. Daniel Bradshaw had arrived. The man looked the same as he did in the office, impeccably dressed expression, unreadable, radiating an aura of controlled authority that made everyone around him seem smaller. He scanned the room with cold efficiency, his gaze passing over the decorations, the guests settling finally on Ethan. "Mr. Bradshaw." Ethan moved forward, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Thank you so much for coming. I'm really honored that you—" "Where's the bar?" Daniel's voice was clipped professional. To the left, against the wall." Daniel nodded once and walked past him without another word, leaving Ethan standing there like an idiot. "Well," Rob said, appearing at his elbow, "that was warm and fuzzy." The party continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Everyone was aware of Daniel Bradshaw sitting at a corner table nursing a whiskey, watching everything with those cold, assessing eyes. Conversations were more subdued. Laughter was more careful. Even the jazz seemed to play softer. Ethan tried to mingle, tried to be a good host, but he kept glancing at his boss, wondering what the man was thinking, what he was judging. Sarah squeezed his hand whenever she caught him looking, a silent reminder to breathe. At 7:45, his phone buzzed again. Another text from his mother. "Just parking. Be right up," and then at 8:02 p.m., the door to the private room opened. Olivia Thompson stepped inside, and time seemed to slow down. She was wearing the blue dress, and Ethan was struck by how beautiful his mother looked. Not glamorous, not trying too hard, just herself. Her gray-streaked hair was styled simply. She wore minimal makeup. She carried herself with quiet dignity, the way someone moves when they have nothing to prove and nothing to hide. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a young man Ethan recognized immediately. Marcus. His best friend from college, the guy he'd traveled through Europe with, the one who'd been his roommate senior year, who'd helped him move into his first apartment, who'd been at every major moment of his adult life. Marcus, who was looking at him with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. "Mom," Ethan moved forward confused. "What are you doing here? Obviously you're here for my birthday, but why is Marcus with you? How do you even know each other?" Olivia smiled, but there was something in her eyes, nervousness, determination that made Ethan's chest tighten. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she said softly. "Marcus and I have some things we need to tell you, things that connect all of us in ways you never knew." And then from the corner of the room there was a sound like glass breaking. Ethan turned to see Daniel Bradshaw standing, his whiskey glass shattered on the floor at his feet, his face drained of all color. The CEO was staring at Olivia as if he'd seen a ghost. "You," Daniel whispered, and his voice was nothing like the cold, controlled tone Ethan knew. It was broken raw, filled with 15 years of searching. "It's you, the nurse, the one who disappeared." The entire room fell silent. Olivia met Daniel's gaze steadily. "Yes, Mr. Bradshaw, it's me. And I think it's time we all sat down and talked about what happened the night you almost lost your son." Marcus stepped forward and his voice was gentle but firm. "Dad, this is Olivia Thompson. She's the woman who saved my life 15 years ago. She's the one you've been searching for." Daniel took a step forward, then another, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face. "I looked everywhere. I sent investigators. I checked every hospital database. How did you just vanish?" "I didn't vanish. I nearly died." Olivia's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "I gave you 450 milliliters of blood that night, Mr. Bradshaw. More than is typically safe, especially for someone in my condition. I was in a coma for 3 days. When I woke up, I had my own 1-year-old son to take care of, and I couldn't afford to be pulled into legal questions or media attention or gratitude." Ethan felt like the floor was tilting. "Wait. What, Mom? What are you talking about? What condition you were in a coma when—" Sarah gripped his arm, sensing he might need the support. Marcus moved to stand beside Daniel, and for the first time Ethan saw the resemblance. Same eyes, same jawline, same way of standing shoulders back, ready for anything. "Ethan," Marcus said quietly, "I need to tell you something. My real name is Marcus Bradshaw. Daniel Bradshaw is my father. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to treat me differently. And later, when I found out you worked for my dad's company, I was afraid you'd think I was using our friendship to spy on you or something." The room was spinning now. Ethan looked from Marcus to his mother to Daniel Bradshaw, trying to piece together what was happening. "So you're telling me," Ethan said slowly, "that my mother saved my best friend's life 15 years ago, that she almost died doing it, and that my boss, the man who's been making my life hell for the past year, is Marcus's father. And none of you thought to mention this before." "I only found out recently," Olivia said. "When I saw your boss's name, something clicked. I did some research, made some calls. Marcus and I only spoke for the first time yesterday." Daniel was still staring at Olivia, and tears were running down his face. Actual tears. The coldest man Ethan had ever known was crying in front of a room full of people. "You saved him," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "My son, my Marcus. You gave your own blood when no one else could. You nearly died. You—" He covered his face with his hands. "I've been looking for you for 15 years. 15 years. I wanted to thank you. I wanted to tell you that because of you, my son is alive. And I wanted to ask why. Why you would do that for a stranger." Olivia walked across the room until she stood directly in front of Daniel. She was several inches shorter than him, but somehow in that moment she seemed larger than life. "Mr. Bradshaw," she said gently, "I did it because your son was dying and I could help. That's what nurses do. That's what humans do. We help each other. We save each other, even when it costs us everything." She reached up and touched his arm just once, brief and tender. "And I want you to know something else," she continued. "I don't regret it. Not for a single moment. Yes, it ended my nursing career. Yes, it changed my life in ways I'm still dealing with. But Marcus is alive. He's standing right there, healthy and strong and wonderful. And that was worth it. That will always be worth it." Daniel looked at his son, really looked at him maybe for the first time in years. "Marcus," he whispered, "son, I'm so sorry. For everything. For the distance. For the coldness. For making you feel like you weren't enough. The truth is," his voice broke, "the truth is every time I look at you I see your mother. And it hurts so much. And I didn't know how to tell you that the pain wasn't because of you. It was because I lost her, and I was so afraid of losing you too." Marcus stepped forward and wrapped his arms around his father. Daniel stiffened for just a moment, then collapsed into the embrace, sobbing like a child. The room remained silent, giving them space, witnessing something profound and private, and somehow universal. Ethan felt tears streaming down his own face. Sarah was crying too, her hand in his, and Rob, standing beside them, whispered, "Best birthday party ever, man." Eventually, the guests began to filter out, sensing that the night had become about something bigger than birthday cake and presents. Rob squeezed Ethan's shoulder before leaving. "Call me tomorrow. We need to talk about this." Sarah kissed Ethan's cheek. "I'll give you some space with your mom, but I'll wait outside if you need me." "Thank you," Ethan whispered. Soon only 5 people remained in the private room: Olivia, Ethan, Daniel Marcus, and Jessica Williams, who had arrived late and stood near the door, tears streaming down her own face. "I knew," Jessica said quietly, addressing the room. "Not everything, but some of it. I was working at St. Mary's 15 years ago in administration. I was the one who processed Marcus's admission paperwork that night, and I saw what happened. I saw Olivia collapse after giving blood. I saw them rush her to emergency care. I tried to tell Mr. Bradshaw later, after he recovered from his own shock, but by then Olivia had been transferred to another facility, and the records were protected by privacy laws." Daniel turned to her, his face still wet with tears. "You knew all these years you knew, and you never said anything. You never asked the right questions," Jessica said gently. "And I couldn't violate patient confidentiality. But when you started asking me to search the old hospital databases this week, I had a feeling you were getting close to the truth." Olivia gestured to the table. "Perhaps we should all sit down. There's more to this story, and I think we all need to hear it." They settled around the table, a strange family bound by blood and sacrifice and secrets that had shaped all their lives in ways they were only beginning to understand. "I need to explain something," Olivia began, looking at Ethan, "about why I did what I did that night. Why I risked everything." Ethan leaned forward, his anger from earlier dissolving into something more complex. "I'm listening." "You were 13 months old, barely walking, still nursing sometimes when you were scared or tired. I just finished a double shift at the hospital, 18 hours on my feet, and I was getting ready to go home when the call came through. Car accident on the Brooklyn Bridge, multiple casualties, 1 child critical needing massive blood transfusion, type AB negative." She looked at Marcus. "That's one of the rarest blood types. Only about 1% of the population has it. The hospital blood bank had maybe 1 unit in stock, and you needed 4 or 5. They were calling every hospital in the city, but it was going to take hours to get more, and the doctor said you didn't have hours." Daniel's jaw clenched. "I remember them saying that. Minutes, not hours. They kept saying it over and over. Dr. Foster, he was the attending, he asked if anyone on staff matched the blood type. I did. I'm O-negative universal donor. I could give to anyone." Olivia's voice remained steady, but her hands shook slightly. "But there was a problem. I'd given birth 13 months earlier. My iron levels were still recovering. I was anemic. I was exhausted. And I was a single mother with no family support." "Oh, Mom," Ethan whispered. "Dr. Foster told me it was too dangerous. He said giving that much blood in my condition could cause severe complications, could even kill me. But I looked at you, Marcus, and I saw—" Her voice caught. "I saw my own son. I saw what it would mean for your father to lose you on the same night he lost your mother. I saw the hole it would tear in the universe if I didn't at least try." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "You could have died." "Yes, and I nearly did. They had to transfuse me with 3 units of blood after I collapsed. I was in ICU for 3 days. Your father never saw me because he was with you, and by the time he asked about me, I'd been transferred to a different hospital for recovery. The records got lost in the shuffle. Privacy laws protected my identity. And honestly," she looked at Daniel, "I didn't want to be found. I didn't want gratitude or media attention or any of that. I just wanted to go home to my son and try to rebuild my life." "But your nursing career," Jessica said softly. "You never went back?" "No, the blood loss did permanent damage. I couldn't stand for long shifts anymore. Couldn't handle the physical demands. I did administrative work for a few years, then took disability retirement. It's been difficult, financially and emotionally. But I made peace with it because every time I thought about giving up, I remembered that a little boy was alive because I'd made that choice." Daniel stood abruptly, walking to the window. His shoulders were shaking. Marcus looked at Ethan and suddenly something clicked in Ethan's mind. "How long have you known?" he asked his friend. "About your dad being my boss." "About 2 years," Marcus admitted. "I saw you at the company Christmas party. You were with the marketing team. I couldn't believe it at first, my college roommate working for my father's company. But you were using your middle name Thompson, and I used my mother's maiden name Morrison, so neither of us realized the connection." "Why didn't you tell me?" "For the same reason I never told anyone at college whose son I was. Because I wanted people to see me, not my father's money or his reputation. I wanted real friendships, real connections." Marcus's voice was passionate. "Ethan, you became my best friend because you saw who I actually was. You didn't care about my family background or my father's company. You saw me." "I still see you," Ethan said firmly. "Marcus, you're my brother in every way that matters. Learning about your father doesn't change that." "There's something else," Marcus said, looking at Daniel's back. "Something I need to confess. Dad, you should hear this, too." Daniel turned from the window, his face still ravaged by emotion. "For the past 2 years, since I realized Ethan worked at Bradshaw Enterprises, I've been protecting him, watching out for him." Marcus looked uncomfortable. "There were times when you were going to fire him, Dad. Times when his projects went wrong or his presentations didn't meet your standards. I intervened. I asked you, begged you sometimes to give him another chance." Ethan felt his stomach drop. "You what?" "I never told you he was my friend. I just made suggestions, pointed out his potential, reminded you that good employees sometimes make mistakes." Marcus turned to Ethan. "I know you probably hate the idea that I was protecting you without you knowing, but I couldn't just stand by and watch my father destroy your career." "Why?" Daniel's voice was harsh. "Why would you care so much about one employee?" "Because he was my friend." Marcus stood, his voice rising. "Because for 15 years you've been cold and distant with me, Dad. You've been impossible to please, impossible to reach. But Ethan's friendship reminded me what real connection feels like, what family should be. And I wasn't going to let you take that away from me, just because you don't know how to deal with your own grief." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Daniel said very quietly, "You're right." Everyone turned to stare at him. "You're absolutely right, Marcus. I've been a terrible father. I've let my grief over your mother turn me into someone cold and cruel. I've pushed away the one person who matters most to me because I was too afraid to feel anything at all." He looked at Olivia. "And this woman, this stranger, loved my son enough to risk her life for him when I couldn't do anything but stand there and watch him die." "You didn't stand there," Olivia said firmly. "You loved him. You held his hand. You prayed. You did what parents do. You were present. That's not nothing, Mr. Bradshaw. That's everything." Daniel walked back to the table and sat down heavily. "I owe you all an apology. Marcus, for the years I've wasted being distant. Ethan, for making your work life hell because I saw something in you that reminded me of what I used to be before I turned bitter. And Olivia," his voice broke, "I don't even know where to begin. You gave me the most precious gift imaginable. You gave me my son's life, and you nearly died doing it. How does someone even begin to repay that?" "You don't," Olivia said simply. "That's not how it works. I didn't do it for repayment. I did it because it was right. But you lost your career, your health, God knows what else. And I gained something too. I gained the knowledge that I made a difference when it mattered most. That's worth more than any career." She smiled at Marcus. "And look at you now, 26 years old, healthy, strong, living your life. That's my payment, Mr. Bradshaw. That right there." Jessica, who had been quietly crying throughout this exchange, finally spoke up. "There's something else you all should know. Something I discovered when I was searching those old records this week." Everyone turned to look at her. The night of the accident, after Olivia collapsed and was taken to emergency care, her son, Ethan, you were left with a babysitter. But the babysitter panicked when Olivia didn't come home. She called the hospital, and they told her Olivia was in ICU unconscious. The babysitter didn't know what to do with a 13-month-old baby, so she called Child Protective Services. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. "What? You were going to be placed in temporary foster care," Jessica continued. "But I intervened. I took you home with me for those 3 days until your mother woke up. I fed you, changed you, held you when you cried for your mama. She looked at Olivia with tears streaming down her face. You gave everything to save a stranger's child. I gave 3 days to save yours. It seemed like the least I could do. Olivia stood slowly, her hand over her mouth. That was you? Oh my God. I never knew. When I woke up, they told me Ethan had been with a hospital volunteer, but they wouldn't give me a name because of privacy concerns. I tried to find out who, but... She crossed to Jessica and pulled her into a fierce hug. Thank you. Thank you for taking care of my baby when I couldn't. Marcus and Ethan looked at each other across the table, and suddenly both of them started laughing. It was the kind of laughter that comes from emotional overload from too many revelations in too short a time from the sheer absurdity of fate bringing them all together. So let me get this straight, Ethan said, still laughing through his tears. 15 years ago, my mother saved your life. Your father's assistant saved my life. And now you and I are best friends. I work for your father, and none of us knew about any of this until tonight. That about sums it up, Marcus agreed, grinning despite his own tears. We're connected, Olivia said softly. All of us. By blood, by sacrifice, by chance, by choice. We're family now, whether we planned it or not. Daniel stood and walked around the table to Olivia. He held out his hand formally, and she took it. Mrs. Thompson, he said, his voice steady now, purposeful. I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it before you answer. All right? You sacrificed your career to save my son. You lost your ability to do the work you loved. You've struggled financially. I can see it in the worry lines around your eyes, in the way your dress is 5 years out of style, in the way you hold yourself like someone who's learned to do without. He gripped her hand tighter. Let me help you. Let me give you back something you lost. What's your dream, Olivia? If you could do anything, be anything, what would it be? Olivia looked at him for a long moment, then at Jessica, then at her son. I want to open a clinic, she said quietly. A free clinic for people who can't afford health care. I want to use everything I learned in 20 years of nursing to help people who fall through the cracks, people like I was struggling, scared, trying to survive. That's my dream. Daniel smiled, really smiled for the first time since anyone could remember. Then that's what we'll do, he said. Together. We'll make it happen. Consider it the beginning of my repayment, though I know I'll never truly be able to repay you. And as the small group sat together in the garden terrace, surrounded by the remnants of a birthday party that had become something far more significant, they began to talk about the future, about clinics and healing, about forgiveness and family, about the invisible threads that connect us all the way one moment of courage can ripple through years and lives, changing everything. Ethan looked at his mother with new eyes. She wasn't embarrassing. She wasn't someone to be ashamed of. She was a hero. She always had been. He'd just been too blind to see it. The private room and the garden terrace had transformed from a celebration into something more profound, a confessional, a reunion, a reckoning. Most of the guests had tactfully departed, sensing that what was unfolding needed privacy. Only the core group remained: Olivia and Ethan Daniel and Marcus, Sarah, Rob, and Jessica. They'd rearranged the chairs into a circle, abandoning the formal table settings for something more intimate. Daniel sat with his hands clasped between his knees, his composure from earlier completely shattered. His eyes were red-rimmed, his expensive suit rumpled. He looked nothing like the intimidating CEO who'd terrorized Ethan in conference rooms. I need to tell you everything, Daniel said, his voice hoarse. About that night, about what happened, about why I've been the way I've been for 15 years. Marcus moved his chair closer to his father, a silent show of support. Olivia nodded encouragingly. It was November 14th, 15 years ago, a Tuesday. Daniel's voice was distant, lost in memory. Anna's birthday. She turned 43 that day. We'd gone to dinner at her favorite restaurant, this little Italian place in Brooklyn that's not there anymore. Marcus was 11. He'd given his mother a card he'd made himself with terrible stick figure drawings of our family. Marcus smiled sadly. I remember that card. You kept it, didn't you? It's in my desk drawer at home. I look at it every day. Daniel's voice cracked. After dinner, we were driving home. Anna was in the passenger seat. She was laughing about something I can't even remember what now, but I remember her laugh. God, I remember her laugh. He paused, gathering strength to continue. The room was silent except for the distant sounds of the restaurant beyond the closed door. We were on the Brooklyn Bridge. Traffic was light. It was raining, not heavy, just a drizzle. Anna was talking about Marcus's upcoming school play. He was going to be in A Christmas Carol. He was nervous about his lines. I knew all my lines, Marcus whispered. But I never got to perform. The play was 3 weeks after the accident. Daniel nodded, tears streaming down his face. Then everything happened so fast. A semi-truck in the lane beside us, the driver had been on the road for 18 hours, we found out later. He was falling asleep. His truck started drifting into our lane. I saw it coming. I had maybe 2 seconds to react. Olivia reached over and took Daniel's hand. He gripped it like a lifeline. I swerved, hit the brakes, but the truck clipped our rear bumper. We spun. I lost control. We hit the bridge railing going 40 miles an hour. The passenger side, Anna's side, took the full impact. His voice broke completely. She died instantly. They told me later she didn't suffer, but I was there. I heard the sound, the metal crushing, the glass breaking, and then silence. Anna wasn't laughing anymore. She wasn't making any sound at all. Sarah was crying silently. Even Rob, who usually maintained emotional distance, had tears in his eyes. I was conscious but trapped. The airbag had deployed, broken, my nose cracked 3 ribs, but I could turn my head enough to see Anna, to see that she was gone. And then I heard Marcus in the back seat. He was making this terrible sound, this wet gasping sound. He was bleeding. So much blood. Marcus stared at his hands, and Ethan realized his friend was seeing it too, reliving a trauma he'd been too young to fully process. I screamed for help, Daniel continued. Other cars had stopped. People were calling 911, but I was trapped in the car with my dead wife and my dying son, and I couldn't do anything. Couldn't help him. Couldn't save him. Couldn't even hold his hand. The firefighters had to cut us out. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of listening to Marcus struggle to breathe while I stared at Anna's face and knew she was gone. Do you know what 20 minutes feels like when your child is dying? It feels like eternity, Olivia said softly. It feels like the world has stopped spinning, and you're suspended in the worst moment of your life with no way out. Yes. Daniel looked at her with such gratitude for understanding. Exactly that. And I made promises to God in those 20 minutes. I promised I'd be better, do better, give everything away, dedicate my life to helping others. Anything, just please, please save my son. He wiped his face roughly. They got Marcus out first, put him on a stretcher. I saw his face so pale, his lips blue. The EMTs were working on him, but I could see in their eyes they didn't think he'd make it. And then they got me out and I tried to go to him, but they wouldn't let me. They put me in a different ambulance. Jessica spoke up quietly. I was working the admissions desk that night. It was supposed to be a slow shift. Then the call came through: major accident, multiple casualties, 1 child critical. We mobilized the trauma team. When they brought Marcus in, Dr. Foster took one look at him and said, "Get me blood, now." Daniel nodded. They let me see him for just a moment before they took him into surgery. He was unconscious, tubes everywhere. I held his hand and I told him his mother loved him, that I loved him, that he had to fight, that I couldn't lose him too. Then they made me wait outside, hours. Nobody would tell me anything. Finally, Dr. Foster came out. And I had to deliver the worst news a doctor can give, Dr. Foster interjected, speaking for the first time. He'd arrived late and had been standing quietly by the door. I had to tell a man who'd just lost his wife that his son probably wouldn't survive the night. Daniel's whole body shuddered. You said he needed blood. Massive transfusion. Type AB negative. But the hospital didn't have enough. You were calling other hospitals, but it would take hours to get blood shipped over. And you said Marcus had minutes. 45 minutes at most, Dr. Foster confirmed. His internal injuries were severe. Liver laceration, ruptured spleen, internal bleeding. We couldn't stop without enough blood to keep his pressure up during surgery. Without that blood, he would die on the operating table. Olivia took over the story. I was ending my shift, double shift, 18 hours. I was exhausted. My feet hurt. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I was thinking about getting home to Ethan. He was 13 months old, just starting to walk, still nursing before bed. I missed him. She looked at her son. You were the only thing in my life that mattered. Your father had left when I was pregnant. My parents were gone. I had no family, no support system. Just you and me against the world. And I was doing okay. Working my shifts, paying the bills, being your mom. That was enough. Then the overhead page came through. Emergency call for all staff. Type O negative or AB negative blood donors needed immediately. Pediatric patient critical. I almost ignored it. I was so tired, but something made me stop. Dr. Foster nodded. I saw her turn around and come to the ER. She looked terrible pale, exhausted, swaying on her feet. I almost sent her home, but she looked at me and said, I'm O negative. Universal donor. How much do you need to eat? I told her the situation, told her it was risky, told her she'd given birth recently and wasn't in ideal condition to donate. But she looked past me into the trauma bay where we were prepping Marcus for surgery. Olivia's voice was steady but thick with emotion. I saw this little boy, blonde hair, freckles, wearing a shirt that said future scientist, and I saw his father through the window pressing his hand against the glass trying to get to his son. She looked at Daniel. I saw you mouth the words, please don't take him. You were talking to God, or to the universe, or to anyone who would listen. And I thought about what I would do if it were Ethan on that table, what I would want someone to do for my child. So I said yes. I didn't think about the risks, didn't think about my own son at home, didn't think about my career or my health or anything, except that a little boy was dying and I could help. Dr. Foster's voice was clinical, but his hands were shaking as he spoke. I advised against it, strongly. Olivia's hemoglobin was already low. She was showing signs of anemia from recent childbirth. Taking 450 milliliters of blood from her, the amount Marcus needed, could cause severe complications, fainting, seizures, even death. But we were out of time. Marcus's blood pressure was dropping. His heart rate was erratic. So I made the call. We set up the transfusion. Olivia lay down on the gurney next to the trauma bay. I inserted the needle. And we started drawing blood. Olivia took over. I remember watching the bag fill up. Red, dark red, my blood flowing out of me and into a bag that would save a stranger's life. I felt weak almost immediately. Dr. Foster kept asking if I was okay. I kept saying yes. But I wasn't okay. About halfway through, I started feeling dizzy, then nauseous. My vision got blurry around the edges. I heard Dr. Foster say, "That's enough," but I grabbed his arm. I said, "Keep going. He needs more." That was the moment I knew I was going to lose you both, Dr. Foster said quietly. The donor and the patient. Olivia's blood pressure was dropping. Marcus was crashing on the table. I was trying to save 2 lives simultaneously and failing at both. Daniel was sobbing openly now. I didn't know someone was dying to save my son. They wouldn't let me in the trauma bay. I couldn't see. We got enough blood, Dr. Foster continued. Barely. And just as we finished the transfusion, Olivia collapsed. Seizure. Her body couldn't handle the blood loss. We had to take her directly to emergency care while simultaneously rushing Marcus to surgery. I worked on Olivia while my surgical team worked on Marcus, and I prayed something I don't usually do, that I wouldn't lose either of them, that this woman's sacrifice wouldn't be in vain. Jessica stepped forward. I was monitoring both situations from the admin desk. I saw them wheel Olivia past unconscious, her face white as paper, and I thought about her baby at home, 13 months old, probably waiting for his mother. I made some calls, found out about the babysitter who was panicking. I went and picked up Ethan myself. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. You took care of me. For 3 days. You cried for your mama. You wouldn't eat much. You kept looking at the door, waiting for her to come home. I held you, sang to you. The second night, you finally fell asleep in my arms, and I cried. Because this little boy might lose his mother, because she'd saved another little boy. But on the 3rd day, Olivia woke up. Her first words were, "My son. Where's my son?" I brought you to see her in recovery. You climbed onto her bed and wouldn't let go. Olivia was crying now, too, remembering. You were so small, so scared. You kept patting my face, saying, "Mama, okay. Mama, okay." And I promised you I was okay. Even though I couldn't feel my legs and could barely sit up, I promised you I was fine. She looked at Daniel. And you know what the worst part was? I didn't even get to see if Marcus survived. They transferred me to a different hospital for extended care the next day. Privacy laws meant they couldn't tell me about his condition. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks total, then home on bed rest for another month. When I finally recovered enough to go back to work, I tried to find out what happened to the boy I'd saved, but the records were sealed, patient confidentiality. I asked Dr. Foster, but he couldn't tell me. It was like I'd given everything to save a ghost. Dr. Foster nodded. I wanted to tell her, but the laws were strict, and by the time I could have found a way around them, Olivia had been forced to retire. Her body never fully recovered from the blood loss. She couldn't handle 12-hour shifts anymore, couldn't stand for extended periods, had chronic fatigue. Her nursing career was over at 37 years old. And I blamed myself, Daniel said, his voice breaking. Not right away. Not while Marcus was in the hospital for 6 weeks fighting through multiple surgeries and complications. Not while I was planning Anna's funeral and trying to keep our company from falling apart. But later, when Marcus finally came home and started recovering, when life returned to something resembling normal, I started asking questions about the blood donation, about who had saved my son. The hospital staff were evasive, said it was confidential, but I hired investigators. I offered rewards. I checked every hospital database I could access. Nothing. The nurse who'd saved Marcus had vanished. Marcus looked at his father with new understanding. That's why you were always in your office, always working late, always distracted. You weren't avoiding me. You were looking for her. I was doing both, Daniel admitted. Marcus, I avoided you because every time I looked at you, I saw your mother, saw the wife I'd failed to protect. And the guilt of being alive when she wasn't, of being the driver, of failing to avoid the accident, it ate me alive. But I also looked for the woman who'd saved you, because I needed to thank her. I needed to tell her that her sacrifice mattered, that you were alive and healthy and growing up. His voice broke. I needed to ask why. Why would someone risk everything for a stranger? He looked at Olivia with such raw emotion that everyone in the room felt it. And now I know. Now I understand. You did it because that's who you are, a healer. Someone who sees suffering and acts. Someone who doesn't calculate the cost before jumping in to help. Someone infinitely braver than I could ever be. The revelations hung in the air, heavy and profound. Ethan stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need some air. Before anyone could respond, he was out the door, leaving the private room and heading toward the outdoor terrace. Sarah moved to follow, but Olivia shook her head. Let him process. He needs time. But after 5 minutes, Olivia couldn't stand it anymore. She found her son standing at the terrace railing, staring out at the Manhattan skyline, his shoulders rigid with tension. Ethan, did you know you almost died? His voice was harsh, angry. Did you know that when you made that decision, you might never see me again, that I was 13 months old and could have ended up in foster care if you died on that table? Olivia moved to stand beside him. Yes, I knew the risks. And you did it anyway. Yes? Why? Ethan turned to face her, and his eyes were filled with tears and confusion and something that looked like betrayal. Why would you risk orphaning me? Why would you choose a stranger over your own son? I didn't choose him over you, sweetheart. I chose to save a life when I was the only one who could. But what about me? What about my life? What if you died? What would have happened to me? Olivia reached for his hand, but he pulled away. The rejection stung, but she understood. She'd spent 15 years processing what had happened that night. Ethan had learned about it 20 minutes ago. You're right to be angry, she said quietly. You're right to feel like my decision affected you without your consent. It did. My choice that night changed the trajectory of your entire life. My nursing career ended. I couldn't work the same way. We struggled financially. I had to take disability payments. We lived in that small apartment in Queens while other kids had houses with yards. I couldn't always afford the school trips or the new clothes or the things other parents could give their children. And that was because of the choice I made to save Marcus. Ethan's jaw was tight, but he was listening. But here's what I need you to understand. If I hadn't made that choice, Marcus would have died. Daniel would have lost both his wife and his son on the same night. That man in there, the one who's been rebuilding his relationship with his son, who's finding his way back to being human, he would have been completely destroyed. And you? she said, touching Ethan's arm gently. You never would have met your best friend. Never would have had Marcus as your roommate, your travel companion, your brother in all but blood. All those experiences, all those memories, they wouldn't exist. That doesn't make it okay, Ethan said, but his voice was less harsh. No, it doesn't. And I'm not asking you to think it's okay. I'm asking you to understand that sometimes there are no good choices. Sometimes there are only impossible choices. And we do the best we can with the information we have in the moment we have it. Ethan was quiet for a long time, staring out at the city lights. When he finally spoke, his voice was small, younger than his 28 years. I used to be embarrassed by you. I know. Not just about the karaoke thing. About everything. About how you dressed. How you talked too loud in restaurants. How you always wanted to help people, even strangers. How you volunteered at the community center and brought home stray cats and donated money we couldn't afford to give away. He turned to face her, tears streaming down his face. I thought you were too much, too emotional, too involved. I wanted a normal mom who cared about normal things, who didn't make everything so big. And now I realize that everything that embarrassed me about you was actually what made you extraordinary. You didn't care about fitting in or being quiet or staying in your lane. You cared about helping people, about making a difference, about choosing compassion over comfort. He grabbed her hands. Mom, you almost died to save a stranger's child. And instead of making you more careful, more self-protective, it made you want to help even more people. How do you do that? How do you have that much courage? It's not courage, sweetheart. It's just love. Love for humanity. Love for the gift of life. Love for the possibility that one small action can ripple out and change everything. Ethan pulled her into a fierce hug. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you were too much. I'm sorry I asked you not to embarrass me. I'm sorry I didn't see what everyone else saw, that you're a hero. Olivia held her son and let herself cry. You don't need to apologize. You were young. You wanted to fit in. That's normal. But I hurt you. All those times I rolled my eyes or made comments about your clothes or asked you to please just be normal, I hurt you. And I forgive you, because that's what mothers do. We love you through your mistakes. We wait for you to grow up and understand. And we're grateful when you finally do. They stood together on the terrace for several more minutes, holding each other, both processing the weight of what had been revealed. Finally, Ethan pulled back and wiped his eyes. Marcus is my best friend because your blood runs through his veins. That's insane. It's fate. And Mr. Bradshaw Daniel, he's been searching for you for 15 years. Apparently so. And you never wanted to be found. Olivia shook her head. I didn't want gratitude or recognition. I just wanted to move forward with my life, to focus on raising you. But your life was harder because of what you did. Yes, but it was also richer, because I knew I'd made a difference when it mattered most. And now, she smiled, now I have 2 sons instead of 1. I have an extended family I never expected, and I have the chance to make a difference again if Daniel really means what he said about helping me open a clinic. He means it, Ethan said with certainty. I've worked for that man for a year. I've seen him make promises. He keeps them, all of them. If he said he's going to help you build a clinic, he'll do it. Then maybe everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. Maybe all those years of struggle were leading to this moment, to this chance to help people again. Ethan took a deep breath. I need to apologize to Marcus too, and to Daniel. I've been treating them like a boss and employee when they're actually... What family? Something like that. We're still figuring out what we are to each other. Well, whatever we are, I want to be part of it. I want to help with the clinic. I want to be involved in whatever comes next. Olivia cupped her son's face in her hands. You're already part of it, sweetheart. You always have been. Because everything I did so that you could grow up in a world where people help each other, where sacrifice matters, where courage is rewarded. That's the world I was trying to build for you. And look at you now, you're ready to help build it too. They walked back inside together, and the room fell silent as they entered. Rob looked relieved. Sarah rushed over to check on Ethan. Marcus stood uncertainly, not sure if his best friend was angry with him. Ethan walked directly to Marcus and pulled him into a hug. I'm sorry, Ethan said, for not seeing what was right in front of me, for not understanding what my mother did for you, for being angry when I should have been grateful." "You have nothing to be sorry for," Marcus said, hugging him back fiercely. "This is overwhelming. It's okay to need time to process." "Yeah, but here's the thing, I don't need more time. Because I already know the most important thing, you're my brother. You've been my brother for 7 years. And finding out that my mother's blood literally runs through your veins just makes it official." Daniel had been sitting quietly during Ethan and Olivia's absence, but when they returned, he stood up slowly. His face was ravaged by emotion, years of carefully maintained control completely stripped away. "Marcus, can we talk, just the two of us?" Marcus looked surprised, but nodded. "Of course." They moved to a corner of the private room, away from the others, but still visible. Olivia gave them space, turning to talk quietly with Jessica about what happened in those 3 days she'd been unconscious. Daniel sat down heavily, and Marcus took the chair across from him. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched awkward and heavy with 15 years of unspoken words. "I've been a terrible father," Daniel finally said. "Dad, no, let me say this. I need to say this." Daniel's hands were shaking. "When your mother died, something in me died too. Not just love, though I loved her desperately, but hope, joy, the ability to feel anything without it hurting. And you were there, my son, my only child, and every time I looked at you, I saw her smile in yours, saw her laugh in yours, heard her voice when you spoke, and it was like being stabbed in the heart over and over again." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "I thought you blamed me for surviving when she didn't." "No," Daniel's voice was fierce. "God, no. Marcus, I never blamed you. I blamed myself. I was driving. I should have seen the truck sooner. I should have reacted faster. I should have protected both of you, and I failed. The accident wasn't your fault. The truck driver fell asleep. The investigation cleared you. I know that intellectually, but in here," Daniel tapped his chest, "in here I'm still on that bridge hearing the metal crunch, watching your mother die, listening to you struggle to breathe, and I'm powerless. Completely, utterly powerless." He wiped his face roughly. "So I threw myself into work, into the company, into searching for the nurse who'd saved you. Anything to avoid being still, because being still meant feeling, and feeling meant drowning. I pushed you away. I know I did. I missed your school plays and your basketball games and your graduation. I was cold when you needed warmth. I was absent when you needed presence. I turned myself into a machine because machines don't hurt." Marcus reached across and grabbed his father's hands. "Dad, I forgave you a long time ago. I understood even when I was young that you were drowning. I just didn't know how to throw you a lifeline." "But I'm your father. It wasn't your job to save me. It was my job to show up for you, to help you grieve your mother, to rebuild our family. And I failed. For 15 years I failed." "You didn't fail. You survived. We both did. We survived the only way we knew how." Daniel shook his head. "Surviving isn't the same as living, and I've wasted 15 years surviving when I should have been living. With you. For you." He looked into his son's eyes so like Anna's it was almost painful. "Marcus, I love you. I've always loved you. Even when I couldn't show it. Even when I was cold and distant and impossible to reach. You were always the most important thing in my life. I just forgot how to show you. I love you too, Dad." Marcus's voice broke. "And I need you to know something. I don't resent you for those 15 years. I don't hold grudges. I just want my father back. The one who used to teach me to ride a bike and help with science projects and tell me stories about Mom. That man is still here. He's been buried under grief and guilt, but he's still here. And tonight," Daniel gestured to the room to Olivia and Ethan and the others, "tonight reminded me that life is short, that we don't get unlimited chances, that the time we have with the people we love is precious and fleeting and not to be wasted." He stood up and pulled Marcus to his feet. Then, for the first time in years, he hugged his son. Really hugged him, not the brief, awkward embraces they'd exchanged at holidays, but a real hug. The kind that said, "I'm sorry and I love you, and I'm here all at once." Marcus clung to his father and sobbed. Not quiet, dignified tears, but the kind of deep, racking sobs that come from years of loneliness and longing finally being released. "I missed you," Marcus choked out. "I missed my dad. I'm here now. I promise. I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." They stood like that for several minutes, two men who'd lost too much time trying to make up for it in a single embrace. The others in the room discreetly turned away, giving them privacy, even while staying nearby. When they finally separated, both had red eyes and wet faces, but something between them had healed. Not completely 15 years of distance couldn't be erased in one night, but it was a start. It was hope. Jessica had been watching the reunions unfold with a mixture of joy and sadness. She'd been part of Daniel's life for 20 years, had watched him retreat into himself after Anna's death, had witnessed his transformation into the cold, ruthless CEO that everyone feared. Now, seeing him crack open again, seeing him find his way back to his son, she felt something shift inside herself. There was another truth that needed to come out, another piece of this puzzle that would complete the picture. "There's something else," Jessica said, her voice cutting through the emotional aftermath. "Something I need to tell all of you." Everyone turned to look at her. "I said I took care of Ethan for 3 days while Olivia was unconscious. That's true, but there's more to that story." Olivia sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" Jessica's hands were shaking as she spoke. When the babysitter called the hospital in a panic, she was planning to call Child Protective Services. She didn't know what else to do. She was just a teenager from the neighborhood, completely out of her depth. She said she couldn't keep Ethan any longer. She had school. She had her own family. She was scared. I overheard the call from the admin desk, and I knew that if CPS got involved, Ethan could end up in the foster system. It might take days or even weeks to sort out, even if Olivia recovered. So I made a decision. Ethan leaned forward. "What kind of decision?" "I went to the babysitter's apartment. I showed her my hospital ID and told her I was authorized to take temporary custody of Ethan until his mother recovered. It was a lie. I had no such authorization. But she was so relieved to hand him over that she didn't question it." Olivia's hand went to her mouth. "Jessica?" "I took you home with me," Jessica said, looking at Ethan. "You were so small, so scared. You kept crying for your mama. You wouldn't eat much. You clutched this stuffed rabbit ratty old thing, one ear missing, and you wouldn't let go of it. The first night you cried yourself to sleep. I held you and sang every lullaby I could remember. You'd wake up every few hours calling for your mother. I'd rock you back to sleep, but it broke my heart every single time. The second day I called the hospital to check on Olivia. They said she was still unconscious, critical condition. They couldn't give me a prognosis. I started making plans. If she didn't wake up, I'd figure out how to officially foster you, maybe even adopt you. I wasn't going to let you go into the system. Tears were streaming down Jessica's face now. But on the third day, Olivia woke up, and when I brought you to see her in recovery, you climbed onto her bed and wouldn't let go. You kept patting her face and saying, "Mama, okay, Mama, okay." And she promised you she was okay, even though she could barely sit up. That's when I realized what Olivia had sacrificed. She'd nearly died saving a stranger's child, and her own child had almost lost his mother. The magnitude of that sacrifice hit me like a freight train. She turned to Daniel. "I wanted to tell you. So many times over the years, I wanted to tell you that the woman who saved Marcus had sacrificed everything, that she'd nearly died, that her own infant son had almost ended up in foster care because of what she did for your family. But I couldn't. Privacy laws, hospital regulations, and by the time those restrictions eased, Olivia had disappeared. We couldn't find her. But I never forgot. I kept track of that stuffed rabbit you'd left it at my apartment, Ethan. I saved it. I have it still in a box at home because it was the only tangible reminder that I'd held this piece of Olivia's sacrifice in my arms for 3 days. Ethan was staring at her in shock. "You saved me from foster care." "I did what anyone should have done. What your mother had just done for Marcus. I put a child's welfare above rules and regulations and did what needed to be done." Olivia stood and crossed to Jessica. She took the older woman's hands in hers. "Thank you. Thank you for taking care of my baby when I couldn't. Thank you for breaking the rules to keep him safe. Thank you for caring when you didn't have to. I did it because of what you did," Jessica said, her voice thick with emotion. "You showed me what real courage looks like, what real sacrifice means. You gave blood to save a dying child. I gave 3 days to save yours. It seemed like the least I could do." The two women hugged, both crying. both understanding something profound about the invisible connections that bind people together when they choose to help each other. Rob had been unusually quiet throughout all the revelations, nursing the same drink for the past hour. Now he stood up, his businessman's mind clearly working through implications. "So let me make sure I have this straight," he said, his tone thoughtful rather than mocking. 15 years ago, Olivia saved Marcus's life. Jessica saved Ethan from foster care. Daniel spent 15 years searching for Olivia. And Marcus and Ethan became best friends without knowing any of this. "That's about right," Marcus confirmed. "And now you're all—" "What family?" "Something like that," Ethan said. "We're still figuring it out." Marcus cleared his throat. "Actually, there's one more thing I need to confess. About Ethan and me." Ethan looked at his friend with surprise. "What do you mean? I said I didn't know Ethan worked for my father's company until recently. That was not entirely true." Marcus's voice was uncomfortable. "I've known for 2 years, since I saw you at this company Christmas party." Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd think I'd been lying to you all along. Afraid you'd treat me differently. Afraid I'd lose the one genuine friendship I'd managed to build without my father's influence." Marcus looked at Daniel. "Dad, you've been hard on Ethan. Really hard. There were multiple times in the past 2 years when you were going to fire him. Times when his projects went wrong or his presentations weren't perfect. Do you remember?" Daniel frowned, thinking. "Vaguely. There were a few close calls." "They weren't close calls. You were going to let him go. You'd already made the decision. But each time I talked you out of it." Ethan's face went pale. "You what?" "I never told you Ethan was my friend. I made suggestions. I reminded you that good employees make mistakes. I pointed out his potential. I asked you to give him another chance. And you listened. Not because you wanted to, but because I'm your son and you couldn't say no to me." The room was silent, everyone processing this new information. "So I've been keeping my job because of nepotism." Ethan's voice was tight. "No," Marcus said urgently. "No, that's not it at all. You're good at your job, Ethan. You're creative and hardworking and smart. But Dad's impossible standards would have gotten you fired regardless of your talent. I leveled the playing field. I made sure you got the second chances you deserved. Without telling me. Without asking if I wanted that kind of help. Yes. And I'm sorry. I know it was wrong. But I couldn't stand by and watch my father destroy your career when I knew you were capable of so much more." Daniel looked stricken. "Marcus, you shouldn't have had to do that. You shouldn't have had to protect your friend from me. But I did. Because you were impossible. Because you'd let your grief turn you into someone who demanded perfection and punished anything less. Because good people were quitting left and right rather than deal with your unrealistic expectations." The truth in Marcus's words hung in the air. Daniel didn't try to deny it. He knew it was true. "You're right," Daniel said quietly. "I've been a terrible boss. I've let my personal pain infect my professional life. I've demanded perfection because I was trying to control something, anything, after losing control of everything that mattered." He turned to Ethan. "I'm sorry. For making your work life hell. For nearly firing you multiple times. For being so harsh that your best friend had to intervene to save your job. You deserved better. All my employees deserved better." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. "This is insane. This whole situation is absolutely insane. My mother saved my best friend's life. My best friend saved my career. His father's assistant saved me from foster care. And we all just happened to end up in the same room tonight." "It's not coincidence," Olivia said softly. "It's connection. It's the universe showing us how intertwined our lives are. How one action ripples out and affects everything and everyone around it." Sarah, who'd been listening to everything with wide eyes, spoke up. "So what happens now? Where do you all go from here?" Daniel looked at Olivia with an expression that was part gratitude, part determination, part something that looked almost like reverence. "Mrs. Thompson, Olivia, I've been searching for you for 15 years, not just to say thank you, though I do thank you from the bottom of my heart, but to ask you a question." "What question?" "What's your dream? If you could do anything, have anything be anything, what would you choose?" Olivia was taken aback. I don't know. I haven't thought about dreams in a long time. Think about it now, please, because I owe you a debt I can never fully repay. You gave me back my son. You gave me 15 more years with Marcus. And in a strange way, you gave me Ethan, too, because Marcus's friendship with him has been one of the few lights in his life during these difficult years. So please, tell me your dream, and let me help you make it real. Olivia looked around the room at the faces watching her. At Ethan, her son, who'd finally understood what she'd sacrificed. At Marcus, the boy she'd saved, who'd grown into a wonderful man. At Jessica, who'd saved her son in return. At Daniel, broken and hurting, but trying to find his way back to being whole. I want to open a clinic, she said quietly. A free clinic for people who can't afford health care. People like I was after I lost my nursing career, struggling, scared, rationing medications, choosing between rent and doctor visits. I want to help them. She looked down at her hands. I know it's impossible. It would cost millions. It would take years to set up. It's a ridiculous dream. It's not ridiculous, Daniel said firmly. And it's not impossible. We'll do it. Together. I'll fund it. You'll run it. We'll build something that honors what you did for Marcus. Something that continues your legacy of helping people. You can't just, yes, I can. I'm the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. I have resources. I have connections. And for the first time in 15 years, I have a purpose beyond just making money. Let me do this, Olivia. Let me help you help others. Tears were streaming down Olivia's face. You're serious. Completely serious. We'll start planning tomorrow. Location, staff, equipment, everything. We'll make this happen. I promise you. Marcus stood up. I want to help too. I'll handle operations, logistics, whatever you need. This is important, Mom. He caught himself, smiled. Is it okay if I call you that? I'd be honored, Olivia said, her voice breaking. This is important, Mom, and I want to be part of it. I want to help you help people the way you helped me. Ethan jumped up. I want in too. I can handle marketing, community outreach, fundraising. I can use my business skills for something that actually matters. I'll handle event planning and publicity, Sarah added, caught up in the excitement. I'm good at organizing things and getting people's attention. Corporate partnerships, Rob said, grinning. I know people. I can get us donations, sponsorships, pharmaceutical partnerships. Count me in. I'll help with administration and staffing, Jessica offered. 20 years as an executive assistant means I know how to organize anything. Dr. Foster, who'd been listening quietly, finally spoke. And I'll come out of retirement to be your medical director. Olivia, I've spent 15 years regretting that I couldn't do more to help you after you sacrificed so much. Let me do more now. Let me help you build something beautiful. Olivia looked around at all these people, this strange, wonderful, accidental family, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, tangible, bright-burning hope that maybe her sacrifice hadn't been in vain. That maybe all the struggle and pain and difficulty had been leading to this moment. To this chance to make a difference again, but bigger this time. Better this time. With an entire team of people who believed in the mission. Okay, she said, her voice steady despite her tears. Okay, let's do this. Let's build a clinic. Let's help people. Let's make something good come out of all this pain. Daniel raised his glass. To Hope Haven Clinic, to second chances, to the power of sacrifice, and to the family we found in the most unexpected place. To Hope Haven, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. And as they toasted, as they laughed and cried and began making plans for a future none of them had imagined. 12 hours ago, Ethan looked at his mother and saw her truly for the first time. Not an embarrassing woman who sang too loud and cared too much, but a hero, a woman who'd changed the course of multiple lives through one act of courage, a woman who'd sacrificed everything and asked for nothing in return, a woman who deserved to have her dreams come true. And thanks to Daniel Bradshaw's resources, Marcus's determination, Jessica's wisdom, Dr. Foster's expertise, and the support of this entire accidental family, those dreams were going to become reality. The party at the garden terrace had started as a simple birthday celebration. It had transformed into something far more significant, a reunion, a revelation, a reckoning, and the beginning of something beautiful. As midnight approached and people began gathering their things to leave, Ethan pulled his mother aside one more time. Mom, I have a question. What's that, sweetheart? That night 15 years ago when you made the decision to give your blood to save Marcus, did you know it would lead to all of this? Did you have any idea that one moment would connect all our lives? Olivia thought about it for a moment, then smiled. No, I had no idea. I just knew a little boy was dying and I could help. That was enough. That's what makes you a hero mom. You don't help people because of what you'll get in return. You help them because it's the right thing to do, even when it costs you everything. And look what I got in return anyway, Olivia said, gesturing to the room full of people who'd become family. I thought I'd lost everything that night, but really I'd planted seeds, and now 15 years later, they're finally blooming. Ethan hugged his mother tightly. I love you, Mom, and I promise I will never ever ask you not to embarrass me again. Embarrass away. Be as loud and enthusiastic and caring as you want. Because that's who you are, and that's perfect. I love you too, sweetheart. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for growing up to be the kind of man who wants to help build clinics instead of just making money. I'm so proud of you. As they walked out of the garden terrace together, Ethan and Olivia, Marcus and Daniel, Sarah and Jessica and Rob and Dr. Foster, they weren't just a random group of people anymore. They were a team, a family, a force for good that would change countless lives in the years to come. And it all started with one woman's decision to give blood to save a dying child. One moment of courage, one act of sacrifice, one choice to help when she didn't have to. That was all it took to change everything. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Hope Haven Clinic, casting golden light across the waiting room, where 40 people sat patiently waiting for free medical care. Olivia stood at the reception desk reviewing the day's schedule and couldn't quite believe this was real. 6 months. 6 months since that night at the garden terrace when everything changed. 6 months since Daniel Bradshaw walked back into her life and insisted on making her dream come true. The clinic occupied the ground floor of a renovated brownstone in Queens. 3 examination rooms, a small pharmacy, a counseling office, and a community room where they held health education classes twice a week. The walls were painted a warm cream color. There were plants everywhere Sarah had insisted on that said it made the space feel welcoming. Mrs. Thompson, a young mother, approached the desk, her toddler on her hip. Thank you for seeing us without an appointment. Miguel's been running to fever all night and I can't afford the ER and I didn't know where else to go. Olivia smiled and reached out to touch the little boy's forehead. Hot, definitely feverish. We'll get him checked right away. That's what we're here for, honey. That's exactly what we're here for. Dr. Michael Foster emerged from examination room 2, his white coat crisp despite the early hour. He'd come out of semi-retirement to serve as Hope Haven's medical director, saying he couldn't pass up the chance to work with Olivia again. Ready for the grand opening ceremony? He asked, checking his watch. The ribbon cutting starts in 30 minutes. I still can't believe we're actually doing this. Believe it. You earned this, Olivia, more than anyone I know. Outside, a banner stretched across the front of the building. Hope Haven Clinic, grand opening, free healthcare for all. Below it in smaller letters, founded by Olivia Thompson, RN. Sponsored by Bradshaw Enterprises Medical Division. Daniel had been true to his word. More than true. He'd not only funded the clinic, but had created an entirely new division of his company focused on community healthcare. The initial investment had been substantial $2 million just to get Hope Haven operational. But he'd committed $50 million over 5 years to open clinics in 10 cities across the country. It's not charity, he'd told Olivia during one of their planning meetings. It's justice. You gave me back my son. The least I can do is help you give health care back to people who need it. The transformation in Daniel over these 6 months had been remarkable. The cold, distant CEO had softened into something more human. He smiled now. He laughed. He'd cut back his hours at work to spend more time with Marcus, and the two of them were rebuilding their relationship one difficult conversation at a time. Marcus himself was now Hope Haven's operations manager, handling logistics, supply chains, and staffing. He worked alongside Ethan, who'd left his marketing position at Bradshaw Enterprises to become the clinic's community outreach coordinator. I can make more of a difference here than I ever could selling medical supplies to hospitals, Ethan had told his mother when he announced his decision. This is what matters, Mom. This is real. Sarah had taken charge of all fundraising and special events, using her event planning skills to organize donation drives and awareness campaigns. She worked part-time, splitting her duties between Hope Haven and her own business. And Rob Martinez had leveraged his corporate connections to secure partnerships with pharmaceutical companies, getting medications donated at cost or sometimes entirely free. Even Jessica Williams had gotten involved, serving on Hope Haven's board of directors and using her decades of administrative experience to help establish operational protocols. They were a family now. An unlikely, complicated, beautiful family born from tragedy and sacrifice, and the strange ways fate brings people together. "Mrs. Thompson," a familiar voice called from the doorway. Olivia looked up to see Maria Rodriguez, one of their first patients. She'd come in 8 weeks ago with uncontrolled diabetes, unable to afford her insulin. Now she was managing her condition, had lost 15 pounds, and looked 10 years younger. "Maria, how are you feeling?" "Like a new woman, thanks to you. I brought you something." Maria held out a tin foil-covered dish. "Tamales, my grandmother's recipe. It's not much, but I wanted you to know how grateful I am." Olivia's eyes filled with tears. This was why she'd become a nurse all those years ago. Not for the paycheck or the prestige, but for moments like this, for the privilege of making someone's life a little bit better. "Thank you, Maria. This means the world to me." At 10:00 a.m. sharp, they gathered outside for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. A crowd had assembled, patients, community members, local politicians, and media. Daniel stood beside Olivia, holding oversized ceremonial scissors. Marcus and Ethan flanked them on either side. Sarah held the ribbon taut. A reporter from the local news station stepped forward with a microphone. "Mr. Bradshaw, you're known as one of the city's most successful CEOs, but you've never been involved in community health care before. What inspired this change?" Daniel looked at Olivia, and his expression was gentle. 15 years ago, a woman I'd never met saved my son's life at tremendous personal cost. She nearly died giving him her blood. She lost her career. She struggled for years. And when I finally found her again, she didn't ask me for money or recognition. She asked for the chance to help other people the way she'd helped my son. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "This clinic and the 9 others we'll build in the next 5 years are my way of honoring that sacrifice. But more than that, they're my way of trying to become the kind of person Olivia Thompson already is, someone who sees a need and meets it no matter the cost." The crowd applauded. Olivia felt her cheeks flush. "Mrs. Thompson," another reporter called out, "you were an ER nurse for 20 years before a medical incident forced your retirement. Can you tell us what it feels like to be back in healthcare?" Olivia took the microphone, her hands trembling slightly. "It feels like coming home. For years, I thought that chapter of my life was over. I thought I'd lost the ability to do the work I loved. But what I've learned is that there are many ways to heal people, many ways to serve. And this clinic," her voice broke, "this clinic represents every patient I ever cared for, every life I ever touched, every reason I became a nurse in the first place." She looked at her son. "My son used to be embarrassed by me. He thought I was too loud, too enthusiastic, too much. But the truth is, I was always just trying to love people the best way I knew how. And now, thanks to Daniel's generosity and this incredible team, I get to do that again every single day." Ethan stepped forward and wrapped his arm around his mother's shoulders. "For the record," he said into the microphone, "I was an idiot. My mother is the bravest person I know, and I'm honored to work alongside her." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Daniel handed Olivia the scissors. "Would you like to do the honors?" "We'll do it together," Olivia said firmly. And so they did, Daniel and Olivia cutting the ribbon while Marcus and Ethan held the ends. Sarah took photos, Dr. Foster beamed, and Jessica wiped away happy tears. The doors to Hope Haven Clinic officially opened and people began filing inside. It was perfect. Almost too perfect. Olivia felt a small flutter of worry in her chest, the kind that comes when things are going so well that you're afraid to trust it. But she pushed it aside. Today was about celebration, about hope, about proving that good things could come from sacrifice. She had no way of knowing that in 2 weeks, everything would nearly fall apart. The registered letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, and Olivia's hands shook as she read it. Notice of audit. Hope Haven Clinic selected for financial review by State Healthcare Oversight Committee. All funding sources to be examined. Operations may be suspended pending investigation. "What does this mean?" Ethan asked, reading over her shoulder. "It means someone reported us. Someone thinks we're doing something illegal or unethical." Olivia sank into her desk chair, the letter trembling in her hands. This could shut us down. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his face grim. I just got off the phone with the committee. They're saying our funding structure is irregular, that having a corporate sponsor pay for everything raises questions about conflicts of interest and potential tax violations. But we did everything legally, Sarah protested. She'd arrived with coffee for everyone, her morning ritual. Now the coffee sat forgotten as crisis mode kicked in. We had lawyers review every document. We filed all the proper paperwork. I know, but someone is pushing this hard. Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father that Olivia felt a pang of worry. The committee wants full financial disclosure within 30 days. If they find anything questionable, even something minor, they can revoke our license to operate. Dr. Foster joined them, having overheard from the clinic floor. This is a hit job. Someone doesn't want us here. Question is who? The answer came later that day when Jessica called Daniel's office and got an unexpected voicemail response. Mr. Bradshaw is out of the country on urgent business. For matters regarding Bradshaw Enterprises, please contact our legal department. For matters regarding the medical division in Hope Haven Clinic, be advised that funding is currently under review due to complications with other company investments. Jessica played the message for Olivia and felt sick. What does funding under review mean? It means we might lose Daniel's support just when we need it most. Olivia's voice was steady, but her heart was racing. We need to call him directly. But Daniel's personal cell phone went straight to voicemail. Marcus tried too, with the same result. Something's wrong, Marcus said quietly. Dad wouldn't just disappear without telling me. Not now, not after everything. Over the next 2 days, they pieced together what had happened. Bradshaw Enterprises had invested heavily in a biotech startup that promised revolutionary cancer treatments. The startup had collapsed spectacularly, revealed to be little more than a sophisticated fraud. Investors had lost millions. Daniel had lost nearly $30 million. The company's board was in an uproar. Shareholders were demanding answers. And several major partners had pulled their contracts, citing concerns about Bradshaw's judgment. The medical division is being dissolved, Jessica reported after a tense board meeting. They're calling it a liability. Too much money going out, not enough coming in. They want to focus on core business. But the clinics, Sarah whispered. We just opened. There are 40 people a day depending on us. I know, Jessica's face was drawn. Daniel is fighting it, but he's outnumbered. The board has the votes to overrule him. Ethan slammed his fist on the desk. After everything he said, after all his promises about honoring Mom's sacrifice, he's just going to let them shut us down. It's not that simple, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Dad built this company over 30 years. If he loses control of the board, he loses everything. They're threatening a vote of no confidence. They could force him out entirely. Olivia stood up slowly. The fluorescent lights of the clinic office suddenly felt harsh, unforgiving. Then we'll have to save ourselves. How? Ethan asked desperately. We need $2 million just to keep operating for the next year. Where are we going to get that kind of money? Olivia thought about the 40 patients in the waiting room right now. Thought about Maria Rodriguez and her tamales. Thought about the young mother with the feverish toddler. Thought about all the people who would suffer if Hope Haven closed. We'll throw a fundraiser, she said firmly. A gala. We'll invite everyone who believes in what we're doing. We'll show the community what this clinic means. And we'll raise the money ourselves. Mom, that's insane. Galas take months to plan. We have 30 days before the audit shuts us down. Then we'll do it in 30 days. Olivia looked at Sarah. Can you handle the logistics? Sarah's eyes were wide, but she nodded. I'll need help. A lot of help. But yes, I can do it. Rob can handle corporate outreach, Marcus added, warming to the idea. He knows everyone in the pharmaceutical and medical supply industries. We can get donated auction items. Dr. Foster knows people in the medical community, Olivia continued. Doctors, nurses, hospital administrators. They understand what we're doing here. And I'll handle publicity, Ethan said. Social media, local news, community organizations. We'll make this the event everyone needs to attend. Jessica stood up. I'll help too. I still have connections from 20 years at Bradshaw Enterprises. I know people with deep pockets who owe Daniel favors. They looked at each other, this makeshift family bound by blood and sacrifice, and now by shared purpose. We're really doing this? Sarah asked. We're really doing this, Olivia confirmed. Hope Haven isn't closing, not without a fight. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom looked like something from a fairy tale. Sarah had worked miracles in 4 weeks. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across tables draped in white linen. Centerpieces of white roses and candles created an elegant atmosphere. A string quartet played softly as 500 guests, the maximum the room could hold, filed in wearing their finest clothes. Olivia stood at the entrance in a new dress, this one actually fitting properly, purchased with money Ethan had insisted she accept. Her hair was professionally styled. She wore makeup applied by Sarah's sister, who was a beautician. She looked like someone who belonged at a gala, but inside she was terrified. $2 million, she whispered to Ethan. How are we going to raise $2 million in one night? We'll figure it out. Ethan squeezed her hand. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, professional and confident. Trust the process, Mom. Trust what we've built. The guest list was impressive. Local celebrities had shown up. Business leaders from across the city, medical professionals, community activists, former patients from St. Mary's Hospital who remembered Olivia from her nursing days, and hundreds of people from the neighborhood who'd been helped by Hope Haven in its brief 6-week existence. But one person was notably absent. Daniel Bradshaw hadn't responded to the invitation, hadn't called Marcus back, hadn't acknowledged any of their messages. He'd been radio silent for 3 weeks, presumably dealing with the disaster at his company. He'll come, Marcus said, though he didn't sound certain. He wouldn't abandon us, not after everything. Sarah took the stage as the lights dimmed. She looked stunning in a black evening gown, every inch the professional event planner. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. What you're about to witness is more than a fundraiser. It's a story of sacrifice, redemption, and the power of one person to change the world. The screens around the ballroom lit up with a video presentation. It opened with footage of Hope Haven's first day, the long line of patients, the overwhelmed staff, the gratitude on people's faces as they received care they couldn't get anywhere else. Then it showed testimonials. Maria Rodriguez spoke about managing her diabetes. Before Hope Haven, I was rationing my insulin, choosing between medicine and food. Now I have both. Now I have hope. An elderly man talked about getting his heart medication for free. A young woman discussed prenatal care that probably saved her baby's life. A teenager shared how the clinic's counseling services helped him through depression. Then the video cut to older footage, grainy hospital security camera footage from 15 years ago. Olivia gasped. She recognized it immediately. The footage showed her running down a hospital corridor and her scrubs doctor, Foster, beside her. They burst into an emergency room. The camera angle changed to inside the room, Marcus on the table, doctors working frantically, Daniel standing helpless against the wall. A narrator's voice, Dr. Foster's voice, spoke over the footage. What you're watching is the moment that created Hope Haven. 15 years ago, Olivia Thompson was a single mother working double shifts to support her infant son. She was exhausted, anemic, and by all medical recommendations, not healthy enough to donate blood. The footage showed Olivia lying on a gurney, a needle in her arm, blood flowing through tubes. But when an 11-year-old boy needed blood that no one else could provide, she didn't hesitate. She gave 450 milliliters, more than is typically safe. She gave until she collapsed. She gave until she nearly died. The screen showed Olivia being rushed to emergency care, then cut to Marcus sitting up in his hospital bed days later, alive and healthy. That boy lived because Olivia Thompson decided his life was worth risking her own. But the sacrifice didn't end there. Olivia's nursing career ended that night. She never fully recovered. She spent 15 years struggling financially, dealing with chronic health issues, living modestly, while the boy she saved grew into a man. The video now showed recent footage, Marcus working at Hope Haven, helping patients, organizing supplies. Marcus Bradshaw, the boy who lived now, dedicates his life to helping others the way Olivia helped him. This is the legacy of sacrifice. This is what one moment of courage can create. The final image was of Olivia and Marcus standing together at Hope Haven's entrance, arms around each other, both smiling. The ballroom erupted in applause. People were crying. Olivia was crying. Sarah returned to the stage. Tonight we're asking you to help continue this legacy. Hope Haven has helped over 1,500 patients in 6 weeks, but we're facing an audit that could shut us down. We need $2 million to remain open to expand our services and to prove that community healthcare works. The screens now showed the auction items, luxury vacation packages, artwork, jewelry, concert tickets, signed memorabilia from local sports teams. Everything had been donated by businesses and individuals who believed in the cause. We'll begin the live auction shortly, Sarah announced. But first I'd like to invite someone very special to the stage. Marcus Bradshaw, the boy who lived, has something to say. Marcus walked to the podium, and Olivia could see his hands shaking. Public speaking had never been his strong suit. But when he spoke, his voice was clear and strong. 15 years ago I died. Technically. My heart stopped twice on the operating table. The doctor said I had minutes to live. My father stood in that room and begged God to take him instead. But God had a different plan. He looked out at the audience. The plan involved a single mother who had every reason to say no, who had her own child to worry about, who was barely getting by herself. But she said yes anyway. She gave her blood, her health, her career, all for a stranger. His voice cracked. I don't remember much from that night, but I remember waking up days later and seeing my father asleep in a chair beside my bed. And I remember a nurse, not Olivia, but another one, telling me that an angel had saved my life. I spent years wondering who that angel was. My father searched for her desperately. He hired investigators, checked hospital records, offered rewards. Nothing. She'd vanished like she was never there at all. And then 6 months ago, I walked into my best friend's birthday party, and there she was, Olivia Thompson, my mother's age, my friend's mother, and the woman who'd given me life. It was like every piece of my existence suddenly made sense. Marcus wiped his eyes. Ethan Thompson is my best friend. We met in college, became roommates, traveled the world together. I always felt like we were brothers. Now I know why. His mother's blood literally runs through my veins. We're connected in the most profound way possible. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. But here's what I want you to understand. Olivia didn't save just me that night. She saved my father, too. She gave him a reason to keep living after losing his wife. And now, through Hope Haven, she's saving hundreds of other people. This clinic is her blood made manifest. This is her sacrifice continuing to heal. He looked directly at Olivia. Mom, because that's what I call her now, you told me once that you don't do things for recognition. That you gave that blood because it was the right thing to do. But tonight we're recognizing you anyway. Tonight we're telling the world what you did. And we're asking them to honor that sacrifice by keeping your dream alive. The applause was thunderous. People stood. Olivia covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed. Sarah took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, the live auction begins now. Remember, every dollar goes directly to keeping Hope Haven open. Let's start with item number 1. The auction was going well. Very well. Vacation packages sold for 3 times their value. Artwork commanded incredible prices. A dinner with the mayor went for $50,000. By 10:30 p.m., they'd raised $1.8 million. So close to their goal, but not quite there. Ethan stood against the wall with Rob, watching the numbers climb on the display screen. We might actually do this. We might actually pull this off without Daniel's help. Don't count him out yet, Rob said quietly. Why, he's been silent for 3 weeks. He obviously has his own problems to deal with. Maybe, or maybe he's planning something big. The auctioneer's voice rang out. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have one final item. This one isn't in your program because it was added at the last minute. A very special donation from... The ballroom doors opened. Daniel Bradshaw walked in. The room went silent. All eyes turned to him. He looked different than he had 6 months ago, older, more tired, but somehow more human. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo, just a simple dark suit. He looked like he'd come straight from the airport. Marcus stood up. Dad. Daniel walked to the stage and Sarah handed him the microphone without a word. I'm sorry I'm late, Daniel said, his voice rough. The past few weeks have been difficult. My company is in crisis. I made a terrible investment that cost us millions. My board tried to force me out. They dissolved the medical division. They pulled funding for Hope Haven and the other clinics we'd planned. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. They told me I was being foolish, that spending money on free clinics was bad business, that I needed to focus on profit, not charity, that I was jeopardizing the entire company for sentimental reasons. He paused, looking out at the audience. And you know what? They were right about one thing. My judgment about that investment was terrible. I trusted the wrong people. I let greed and ambition cloud my thinking, and it cost my company dearly. But they were wrong about everything else. His voice grew stronger. Hope Haven isn't charity. It's not sentiment. It's justice. It's humanity. It's the physical manifestation of the best of what we can be when we choose to help each other. Daniel looked at Olivia, who sat at a front table, tears streaming down her face. 15 years ago, this woman saved my son's life. She gave her blood when no one else could. She sacrificed her career, her health, her future, all for a child she'd never met. And when I finally found her again and asked how I could repay her, she didn't ask for money. She asked for the chance to keep helping people. He turned back to the audience. These past 3 weeks, I've been fighting for my company, fighting the board, fighting shareholders who wanted me gone. And I won. Not because I'm a brilliant businessman, recent events prove otherwise, but because I reminded them what this company was founded on. Innovation, yes. Profit, certainly. But also responsibility. The responsibility to use our success to make the world better. Daniel pulled a document from his jacket pocket. So tonight I'm announcing the creation of the Bradshaw Thompson Foundation, a completely independent nonprofit organization dedicated to building and operating free community clinics across the country. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. I'm personally donating $100 million to this foundation over the next 10 years, $50 million immediately and $5 million per year after that. This money is protected untouchable by corporate boards or shareholders. It exists solely to continue Olivia's work. The room erupted. People jumped to their feet, applauding wildly. Daniel held up his hand. But that's not the final auction item. The final item is this. I'm offering my family's vacation home in Lake Morrison, New York. A 5-bedroom lake house on 10 acres of private land. The house where my wife and I raised Marcus. The house filled with memories of better times. I'm donating it to Hope Haven to use as a retreat center for medical staff and patients who need rest. He looked at Olivia again. The starting bid is $500,000. Who will help us reach our goal? $1 million, a voice called from the back. Everyone turned. An elderly man in a wheelchair was raising his hand. I'm Dr. Richard Stern. I was Olivia's first supervising physician when she started at St. Mary's 30 years ago. That woman taught me what it means to be a healer. $1 million. $1.2 million. Another voice. A woman in her 50s stood up. I'm Catherine Miller. Olivia delivered my baby 25 years ago when no other nurse would touch me because I was HIV positive. She held my hand and told me my baby would be beautiful and healthy. She was right on both counts. The bids kept coming. Former patients, doctors who'd worked with Olivia, community members whose lives she'd touched. The price climbed higher and higher. Finally, at $2.5 million, the hammer came down. Sold, the auctioneer announced. To Dr. Richard Stern. The old doctor wheeled forward. I'm buying it, he said into a microphone someone handed him, but I'm giving it back to Hope Haven. Use it well. The ballroom exploded in cheers. People were crying, hugging, celebrating. The final tally appeared on the screen. $4.3 million. More than double their goal. Sarah rushed to Olivia's side. We did it. We saved the clinic. But Olivia was staring at Daniel, who had stepped down from the stage and was walking toward her. When he reached her table, he held out his hand. May I have this dance? Olivia took his hand and he led her to the dance floor. The string quartet began playing Unchained Melody, slow, sweet, nostalgic. As they swayed together, Daniel spoke quietly. I'm sorry I disappeared. I was ashamed. I'd promised you the world, and then I lost everything. You didn't lose everything, Olivia said gently. You still have Marcus. You still have your integrity. You still have the chance to make a difference. The board wanted me to abandon Hope Haven. They said it was a waste of resources, a distraction. Daniel's voice was thick. But I kept thinking about that night 15 years ago, about how you didn't think twice before giving everything to save my son. And I realized that if I walked away from Hope Haven to save my company's bottom line, I'd be betraying everything you taught me about what really matters. So I made them a deal. I'd step down as CEO, something they wanted anyway, but I'd retain my shares and my board seat. I'd focus exclusively on the foundation and the clinics. They get to run Bradshaw Enterprises their way, and I get to run the foundation my way." Olivia pulled back to look at him. "You gave up being CEO." "Happily." Daniel smiled, and it was genuine. "Olivia, I spent 30 years building a company. I was good at it, made a lot of money, earned a lot of respect, but I was miserable, cold, alone. And then you came back into my life and showed me there's more to success than profit margins." He glanced over at Marcus, who was dancing with Sarah while Ethan danced with Jessica. "My son is happy for the first time in 15 years. He has purpose. He has family your son as his brother. And I have hope. Real hope. The kind that comes from doing work that matters." "Thank you," Olivia whispered. "Thank you for believing in this. Thank you for saving my son. Thank you for saving me." They continued dancing as the song played two people who'd been brought together by tragedy and bound together by purpose. Around them, the ballroom celebrated. But in that moment on that dance floor, there was just understanding, just gratitude, just peace. When the song ended, Daniel led Olivia back to her table. Marcus and Ethan were there, grinning like idiots. "So Marcus said, does this mean we're really doing this 10 clinics in 10 years? 10 clinics in 5 years, Daniel corrected. "With the money we raised tonight, plus the foundation, we can move faster. We'll have Hope Haven locations in every major city on the East Coast by 2030. And I want to add counseling services," Olivia said, her mind already racing ahead. "Mental health care is just as important as physical health. Maybe partner with social workers, addiction specialists." "Done," Daniel said. "Whatever you need. This is your vision, Olivia. I'm just the money man." "You're more than that," Ethan said. "Your family." And in that simple statement, everything that had happened over the past 6 months crystallized. They were family. Not by blood, though Olivia's blood literally ran through Marcus's veins, but by choice, by shared purpose, by the invisible threads that connect people when they work towards something bigger than themselves. Sarah raised her champagne glass. "To Hope Haven, to second chances, to the family we choose." "To the family we choose," they echoed, clinking glasses. And as the gala continued around them, as people celebrated and danced and donated even more money to the cause, this small family sat together and talked about the future, about clinics and healing, about the lives they would change, about the legacy they would build together. It was, Ethan thought, the perfect ending to the story that had begun with his mother's quiet act of courage 15 years ago. Except it wasn't an ending at all. It was just the beginning. 1 year later, Ethan Thompson stood in the Garden Terrace's private room, the same room where his 28th birthday had changed all their lives, and adjusted his tie nervously. "Stop fidgeting," Rob said, straightening Ethan's boutonniere. "You look great. Sarah's going to love it." Tonight was Ethan's 29th birthday. But more importantly, tonight was the night he was going to propose to Sarah. The ring was in his pocket, a simple platinum band with a small diamond, all he could afford on a nonprofit salary. But it was perfect, and it was real, and it represented everything he'd learned about what actually mattered in life. The room filled up quickly. All the usual suspects were there, Marcus and Daniel Olivia and Dr. Foster Jessica and her husband Rob and his girlfriend. But there were new faces, too. Staff from Hope Haven and the 3 additional clinics they'd opened. Patients whose lives had been changed. Community members who'd become friends. And in the corner, barely visible at the children's table, was a little boy named Miguel, the feverish toddler Olivia had treated on Hope Haven's opening day. He was healthy now, thriving, his mother able to manage his chronic asthma thanks to free medications and regular checkups. Sarah arrived fashionably late as always, looking stunning in a blue dress that matched her eyes. She kissed Ethan hello, completely unaware of what was coming. "Happy birthday, love. 29, you're getting old." "Speak for yourself, you're catching up." They mingled with guests, Ethan's nerves building with every passing minute. Marcus caught his eye and gave him a thumbs up. Olivia winked knowingly. Daniel nodded approval. Finally, as dinner was being served, Ethan stood up and tapped his glass with a fork. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" The room quieted. Sarah looked at him curiously. "A year ago on my 28th birthday, my life changed completely. I thought I knew what success looked like. A good job, a nice apartment, impressing my boss. I thought the most important thing was not being embarrassed, especially by my mother." Olivia smiled, remembering that phone call. "But my mother, in her infinite wisdom, decided to embarrass me anyway. She showed up to my party with a guest I wasn't expecting. And in doing so, she revealed secrets that connected all of us in ways I never imagined. Ethan looked at Marcus. I gained a brother that night. Not by blood, well, technically by blood, since my mother's blood literally runs through your veins, but by choice. By the realization that the best friend I'd had for 7 years was connected to me in the most profound way possible. He turned to Daniel. I gained a mentor who showed me what it means to rebuild yourself after losing everything. Who taught me that real strength isn't being invulnerable, it's being willing to be vulnerable, to admit mistakes, to choose purpose over profit. Daniel's eyes were shining. But most importantly, Ethan continued looking at Olivia, I gained a new appreciation for my mother, for the sacrifices she made that I never knew about, for the courage she showed in moments that defined all our lives, for the way she loved strangers enough to give them pieces of herself. He walked over to Olivia and knelt beside her chair. Mom, you've spent your whole life saving people. You saved Marcus 15 years ago. You saved me every single day of my childhood. And now through Hope Haven, you're saving hundreds more. You're my hero. You always were. I was just too stupid to see it. Olivia was openly crying now. Ethan. He stood and returned to where Sarah sat, utterly confused about where this was going. This past year has taught me what really matters. It's not about impressing people or climbing corporate ladders or being embarrassed. It's about building something meaningful with people you love. It's about showing up even when it's hard. It's about being brave enough to sacrifice for others. Ethan pulled the ring box from his pocket and dropped to one knee in front of Sarah. The room erupted in gasps and excited whispers. Sarah, you've been beside me through all of this. You planned the gala that saved Hope Haven. You held my hand when I was terrified of disappointing people. You showed me that real partnership means working together towards something bigger than ourselves. You've become part of this crazy, beautiful family we've built. He opened the ring box. So I'm asking you in front of all these people who've become our family, will you marry me? Will you spend your life building this dream with me? Will you be my partner in everything? Sarah's hands were over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Yes. Oh my God, yes. Ethan slipped the ring on her finger and stood pulling her into a kiss as the room exploded in applause and cheers. Miguel escaped from the children's table and ran to hug Olivia, chocolate cake smeared on his fingers. She laughed and hugged him back. Marcus pulled Ethan into a bear hug once he and Sarah finally separated. Welcome to the family officially, though you've been family for a while now. Daniel shook Ethan's hand formally, then surprised everyone by pulling him into a hug too. Your mother would be proud. Is proud, he corrected, seeing Olivia watching them. Dr. Foster proposed a toast. To Ethan and Sarah, to Hope Haven, to the family we choose and the lives we change. May we always remember what brought us together, courage, sacrifice, and love. To courage, sacrifice, and love, the room echoed. As the party continued, Olivia found herself standing at the window looking out at the Manhattan skyline. It was hard to believe that a year ago she'd stood in her small Queen's kitchen worried about embarrassing her son. Hard to believe how much had changed. Daniel approached quietly, handing her a glass of champagne. What are you thinking about? About that phone call a year ago. Ethan begging me not to embarrass him. She smiled. I'm glad I didn't listen. Me too. Daniel stood beside her, both of them watching the lights of the city. You know, I've been thinking about something. The 4th clinic, we're planning to open it in Boston next spring. I want to do something special with it. What do you have in mind? I want to name it the Anna Bradshaw Hope Haven Clinic, after my wife. She would have loved what we're doing. She always believed in helping people and giving back. I think she'd be proud. Olivia touched his arm gently. I think she would be too. And I think she'd be proud of the man you've become this past year. I couldn't have become this man without you. Without what you taught me. Daniel's voice was soft but certain. 15 years ago you gave me my son's life. This past year you've given me my own life back. I'll never be able to repay that. You already have. Look around this room. Look at what we've built together. This is the repayment this family, these clinics, these lives we're changing. This is what matters. Marcus and Ethan joined them at the window, Sarah hanging off Ethan's arm, admiring her new ring. Group photo, Sarah insisted. We need to document this moment. They gathered together, Olivia, Daniel, Marcus, Ethan, and Sarah. Rob took the photo, capturing them smiling arms around each other, the Manhattan skyline behind them. Later, as Ethan helped clean up after most guests had left, he found his mother sitting at a table looking at something in her hands. "What's that, Mom?" Olivia held up an old photograph, the one from her memory box. The one of young Marcus in the hospital bed, Daniel asleep beside him, both fighting for survival. "I kept this all these years. A reminder of why I became a nurse. Of the moment that cost me everything and gave me everything." Ethan sat beside her. "Do you regret it, giving that blood, losing your career?" "Not for a second." Olivia's answer was immediate and firm. "Ethan, I've spent the past 15 years thinking my nursing career was over, thinking I'd lost my purpose. But I was wrong. My purpose didn't end that night, it transformed. It grew. It became something bigger than I ever imagined." She looked around the room at the people cleaning up, laughing, celebrating. "Because I gave Marcus that blood, I connected our families. Because our families connected, Hope Haven was born. Because Hope Haven was born, thousands of people are getting health care who couldn't afford it before. One moment of courage has rippled out into countless other moments. That's not loss. That's multiplication. You're pretty wise, you know that. I'm your mother. It's my job to be wise." She smiled. "Although I seem to remember you thinking I was embarrassing. I was an idiot." "Yes, you were. But you learned. That's all any parent can hope for, that their children learn from their mistakes and become better than they were." Ethan hugged his mother tightly. "I love you, Mom. Thank you for not listening to me. Thank you for bringing Marcus to my party. Thank you for being brave enough to make me uncomfortable. Thank you for being you." "I love you too, sweetheart. Happy birthday." As the night wound down and people began leaving, Daniel approached Olivia one final time. "Same time next year?" he asked. "Another birthday celebration, another chance to see how far we've come." "Absolutely. But let's make it even bigger. Let's invite all the Hope Haven patients and staff. Make it a real celebration of what we've built." "Deal." Daniel held out his hand and Olivia shook it. But then, surprisingly, he pulled her into a hug. "Thank you, Olivia, for everything. For my son's life, for my own life, for showing me what it means to truly live. Thank you for believing in the dream, for making it bigger than I ever could have alone." They separated, both smiling, both knowing they'd be working together for many years to come. As Olivia finally left the garden terrace that night, walking out into the cool New York evening with Ethan and Sarah, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. About a scared single mother who'd made an impossible choice 15 years ago. About the price she'd paid and the gifts she'd received. About the way one moment can change everything. "Mom," Ethan asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "Just thinking about how strange life is. How the things we think will destroy us sometimes save us. How the moments we regret become the moments we're most grateful for." "Deep thoughts for a birthday party." "Well, it was a pretty significant birthday party." Sarah laughed. "The most significant one ever, I think. Engagements, revelations, life-changing connections. We really know how to celebrate." They walked together toward the subway, a newly engaged couple and a mother who'd learned that sometimes embarrassing your children is exactly what they need. That sometimes bringing people together even against their wishes is an act of love. That sometimes courage looks like showing up with unexpected guests and trusting that everything will work out. Behind them, the garden terrace glowed with lights holding within its walls the memories of 2 birthday parties that had changed everything. Ahead of them stretched years of work, of building clinics, of changing lives, of being family. And Olivia Thompson, 53 years old, former nurse, current healthcare revolutionary, walked into that future with her head held high. Not embarrassed, not ashamed, not invisible, just proud, just purposeful, just exactly who she'd always been meant to be.